And we are back for another episode of AlphaCast. It is good to be back. We took a week off from the amazing reunion summit, and it was refreshing. It was we had Foster Gamble actually scheduled, and we decided to reschedule so that we could do that show proper. So Foster will be back on January 29th. So in 2 weeks, we will have Foster Gamble on AlphaCast. But today we are very excited to have Laura Jane Bolton on with us, who was featured in the Reunion Summit and actually was very instrumental in helping us on the back end of that summit. We can talk about a little bit about that today. For those who aren't familiar with what the Reunion Summit is or was, you can go to reunionsummit.com. It was a labor of love by myself and my partner, Josh Del Sol. Alfa Vedic, of course, was heavily involved. Laura was heavily involved, as well as a number of amazing souls. We had 41 talks in different sessions, workshops that were shot live at Music and Sky and Joshua Tree. And we are doing Music and Sky round 2, the weekend of July 2nd through the 4th, out there by Yosemite. And it is a very cool location. I got a video walkthrough yesterday, and I'm very excited about it. It definitely has that festival layout with a very long, spacious, grassy interior with an old barn stage, and then we're building a second stage. I'm getting very excited about it. It's fully off-grid, up in the mountains, and by Yosemite. So for those who are interested in coming to congregate with a very highly conscious and awake a group of souls, definitely check in with us on our Telegram, t.me/Alfa Vedic to get more information, or you can go to musicandsky.com. Due to the nature of this event being that we are doing a live event in 2021 in the year of the zombie masked hordes of and Biden saying maybe 3 of us might be able to meet up on the 4th. We've taken the specific precautions to make this very protected event. So you're not going to see a lot out in the open. You kind of have to go through some channels. We've kind of made it esoteric in that way. It's like we've occulted it a little. So you need to go through some specific channels to get the full information. But if you were involved with Reunion Summit, if you have a full access pass, you will be getting, I believe today, finally, the ticket invite today to purchase tickets. This is a family-friendly event. And we, for those who went to the first Music in Sky, I know that raved out a little bit more. We went all night one night with amplified music. That is not the case this go around. We are cutting the music off at midnight. We will have silent disco. For those who want to continue on the dance party, we will have some acoustic music and stuff, but it will be much more family inclined this go around. Just note that we will have a family camp set up too for those that have kids who are, want to get some sleep. I think it's important to have that silence at night so that we can sit around the campfire and commune and talk. And those who want to go rage still can do that with headphones on and do that all night long. So the headphones are cool. We'll have those working for the speakers. I think that's the plan too. So if you want to go for a walk in the woods and you want to hear Laura's talk, because Laura is going to be there, right, Laura?
Yep.
Sounds like yes. So, and you want to hear her talk, but you maybe are in the middle of doing something else. Maybe you're at camp making lunch. You can check out the headphones, put them on, and actually have an intimate audio of the speaker while you're doing other things. Pretty cool. So everything else is going great there. We're headed right into spring. We're outdoors now and working on the farm. And I know I've been super busy on my land, and this is just my favorite time of the year. It's staying light till, before you know it, 9:30 where you are right now, Laura. It stays light, nice and late, which is a bonus of being in the Pacific Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are just, this is my favorite time of the year. I just love it. It's not too hot yet. You're getting the longer days. The rebirth of spring is upon us. Somebody who loves to grow food and be outside. This is really an amazing time of rebirth, and something we'll talk about today as I feel like a lot of people are coming into their rebirth and starting to witness themselves unfolding into their truth. And this is something, Laura, you're really good at talking about. And I really look forward to diving deeper into that. If you guys are new to Alpha Vedic, maybe you discovered us through Reunion Summit or through other events or through Anarchapulco or all the things Dr. Lando is involved with, you can find out more about us at alphavedic.com. So truth, health, and freedom advocate Laura Bolton joins AlphaCast to discuss how you can navigate our troubled world with ease and grace. Laura Bolton is a vocal advocate for truth, health, sovereignty, and freedom. Once an executive coach and change management consultant, a journey of overcoming various wellness issues led her to leave the corporate world and eventually become a holistic high-performance health coach. As her work evolved, she became increasingly focused on holistic mental and emotional well-being, and subsequent studies with the Heart Math Institute, which we love, inspired in her a desire to bring more heart to the world. By helping others reconnect with their true self, raise their vibration, access their inner power, wisdom, and guidance, and show up in the world from a more coherent, heart-centered place. Laura currently focuses her energy on guiding and supporting awake beings to feel resilient and well in mind, body, and soul, and to navigate these challenging times with ease and grace whilst consciously creating the life and world they desire. Something we need more than ever these days. Dr. Bear Lando, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and I agree with everything you just said. Yeah, my favorite time of the year, too. We're working hard outside. We've got amazing projects. Mike, you're going to be here tomorrow, right?
Yes, I will. I will be there tomorrow bringing some friends to looking to start working on the land. We are bringing more people onto the land. We're building out the operation more. We do currently have a GoFundMe going right now. If you guys want to check that out, just go to alphavedic.com and you'll see information on that. That is very exciting. We're moving forward to building our education center and a bigger commercial center. And we are very busy. Orders are flying in, and that's what funds this project. We have never taken any outside investment. So please help us with the GoFundMe. But yes, I will be there tomorrow for an afternoon hangout. I'm really looking forward to that and seeing all the new stuff that's happened, that is happening on the farm.
Yeah, this time of year, a couple of weeks makes a big difference. You're here a couple of weeks ago, but you're not going to recognize the place just from the changes we've made since then, just expansion and everything. So, Laura, so happy to have you here. You know, I've gotten to know you a little bit from afar and enjoyed your talks and so timely. And I think I need to hear you too today. Fortunately, I live out in the woods and don't have to deal with which we call the mass colds too much.
Yes.
But you know, but it is interesting when I go into town, even though it's a lot looser up here than down south, and everybody knows it's BS, but you still see a lot of people with masks. So I feel like I'm in some kind of sci-fi movie or something. Yeah. But you know, I really enjoy. Yeah. I really enjoy your story. Maybe we could start out. You can tell us a little bit about how you got to. I know you've told the story a lot, but some of our audience might enjoy, if they're seeing you for the first time, how you got to start doing what you're doing, and you know, really around finding the authentic self. You know, being in the health field, you know, we back in the day used to have clinics where people would kind of come in from all over the world, and they had very serious things going on. And one thing I figured out early on when I just had regular offices is that, you know, we do good work, we help people, but then they go right back out into the meat grinder, into the relationships and their jobs and everything else, and just start repeating the same patterns that, you know, create the whole thing in the first place. So we created a live-in situation where we had live-in units. People could live with us for 2-3 months at a time, you know, however long it took. They could, you know, jump into, you know, pools with waterfalls and go pick fruit that was growing wild. And, you know, it's a great situation. But, you know, one thing, you know, I want to share with people, to find your authentic self, it does take a lot of courage, because, you know, what we witnessed in our experience working with people is when they really started getting to the bottom of things, very often they found they had to make some big changes, you know, maybe quit their job, maybe change their relationship, maybe do all sorts of things that are very inconvenient. And I really think that's a big thing that keeps people, in their lanes these days, just all the fears of change. And of course, I'm convinced that everything that they're throwing at us right now is deliberately to keep us from finding our authentic self, because they're constantly dragging us into the past or projecting fears into the future. And of course, the only place of authenticity is in the present moment. And I think that's what we're all trying to find. So I want to hear from you, and just anything you can share, because I know you're the master of this topic. So thanks again for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Bear, and thank you for what you just shared. Yeah, I mean, I completely resonate with that and agree. From I guess in terms of my history and kind of how I got here, as Mike said, years ago I had many different health issues, and I started to realize that the traditional medical model was not working for me, and I started to there was something in my heart that just said, this is wrong. I was being prescribed lots of different things by the doctors, and they were telling me that was the only way, and I just intuitively knew that was not true. And so I started researching and investigating, and I discovered functional medicine, and I started to go down that path, and I healed. I had various issues like mental, emotional, physical, a whole array of things, and I managed to pretty much heal everything naturally. And then I and kind of at that time, there were many changes in my life. I actually ended up I left my corporate career. I started educating myself more and studying in the health field, and became a high performance health coach, where I was working with a lot of I was working with sports professionals and CEOs, entrepreneurs, those kinds of people. But what I actually found as I was going through that process was, specifically with clients, was that this authenticity that you just mentioned was kind of at the root of most of their challenges and the behaviors that they were displaying, and kind of a disconnection from the true self, disconnection from who they truly are, and the things that they value, and the things that they love to do. And I think that when we're disconnected, that's when we can often start to get a range of issues and certain behaviors and habits which do not contribute to us feeling our best. And so as I was learning as I was going through that process, and this kind of kept coming up, and everything seems to be more based in the emotions and the state of mind, and that's what I ended up focusing more on, and then studied with the Heart Math Institute and learning all about the heart and connecting the power of the heart. But I myself, to your question about authenticity and stepping into truth, I've been on a huge journey with this myself. I agree with you. I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we have at the moment, is people not living their truth, not speaking their truth, and not being fully authentic. And as you said, yes, I agree. The agenda and all the things that are being done, I believe, are to disconnect us from ourselves and from other humans, and also to generally dehumanize us and just make us fully disconnected. And in fact, I'd go further to say disconnected. The way that the world is, and some of these systems, the way they run, is it's trying to disconnect us from everything, from natural food, from human connection, from natural environment, with all the EMFs and 5G and all these different things. There's so many different things that are actually disconnecting us from, I guess, what it is to be human and our natural human design. And that's why we have all of these challenges that we have, not just for ourselves from a health and well-being perspective, but also the wider perspective, the effect it has on our friends and family, the effect it has on the world. And this is, as Mike, I think, mentioned, this is so important at this current time, because we're seeing many people not speaking up, not living their truth, not being authentic. And I know myself how damaging that can be, because I've been through that journey of really finding my voice and really stepping into that power. So it's really meaningful to me, and but it also shows that it can be done, because I've been through quite a transformation, so it can be done.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Laura, I'm so happy to hear that you're involved with HeartMath as well. Just a phenomenal technology. And, we hear a lot about people reconnecting with their heart, and it's kind of a new agey concept. But in reality, our heart really is the most advanced brain that we have. It is capable of a whole higher level of logic that the mental plane is not capable of. And so how do we access that? Do you, with HeartMath, obviously you work through the heart as a portal to help people. So can you maybe go off on that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think with reconnecting to ourselves, reconnecting to the heart, and using HeartMath techniques are really, really helpful. For me, it's a tool, it's a way. I think that the entire process of reconnecting to who we truly are and finding our power and finding our voice and connecting with our truth is a journey. And it takes more than just that. But yeah, HeartMath itself, I for the summit I did a HeartMath, not a HeartMath, but a heart connecting meditation, guided meditation, which actually, if people want to join my mailing list, they'll get they can get sent that as well from here, which is kind of using some of those techniques. And the thing is, when we often when we're in our head, we're in our mind, we're in our stories, maybe we're in fear. We're seeing this a lot at the moment in the world, like people in fear, not necessarily even in people who are not necessarily aware and are fearful of a virus, but people who are fearful of what's happening and what could happen in the future. Like, I think most people are in a state of anxiety and fear in some kind of way. And what that does is it completely takes us out of our heart. It can make us behave really irrationally. It can create a lot of pain for us. And so being able to focus on the heart and sort of bring our awareness, into our heart, is incredibly helpful for, particularly for anxiety and stress, getting us out of a fear state, calming us, and helping us to really kind of feel what's true. And we can, as you said, the heart is so powerful. It's, there are more messages that go from the heart to the brain than the other way round, which surprises many people, because most people think of the heart as just this organ that just pumps blood. And as you said, this often when I mention, connecting to your heart, people go, oh, that's just new age weirdness, or it's woo, and that's what's good about the HeartMath Institute. Actually, for over 25 years, they've been studying this. And there's actually an amazing documentary film that I really recommend, called The Power of the Heart. I don't know if either of you guys have seen it, but it's got the people from the HeartMath Institute in it, and they're sharing about the power of the heart. And then there's other stories and things about people connecting. So, by doing that, it is super powerful. And not only can it calm us and center us and ground us, but we can also access our wisdom. So we often talk about, like, what does your heart tell you? And we always and when we talk about feelings, we always say, like, feel it. We don't say I feel. Like, it's always kind of in here. And so I think it's just, being able to access what feels true for you, because usually we'll do what we think we should do, or what others are telling us to do. And we have that weird feeling that something doesn't feel right. And I'm sure most of us have been through that experience where we just know in our heart that something isn't right. And being able to trust that, And I think that, you know, again, in the current time, I think most people are not really connected to their heart. And I often ask people, you know, especially when people are like totally bought into this agenda, I say, what does your heart tell you? Does your heart tell you this is right? And then they'll go back into their head and say, oh yes, but this expert said, or yes. And I'm like, no, what does your heart tell you? And many people don't know, they're disconnected, so they can't access it. And so being able to do practices which actually, you know, bring us back and connect us into our bodies and how we feel, and learning to trust that, I think is absolutely imperative at this current time. And also for those of us who are dealing with, I think being awake is really hard. Like sometimes I do wish that I have these moments where I think, oh, maybe it's better to just be completely asleep and oblivious to, you know, what's happening. But I think, you know, I get messages constantly from people, you know, saying that they're stressed and they're struggling to cope with the madness of this crazy world and what's happening at the moment. And so even then, you know, having practices where we can, you know, connect to our heart and really going on that journey to really get to know ourselves and connect to ourselves and live our truth from that place, I think is important for all of us.
Yeah, brilliant. And, you know, I think it's important to start understanding how we've all been seduced into this materialistic perspective. You know, for instance, the heart does not pump blood. In fact, if the left ventricle mustered up enough pressure to make one pump capable of pushing all the blood through to the terminal capillaries, it would explode in one attempt. It's actually an energy vortex. The other thing I think it's important for us to start understanding is that you know, what we think of as the brain doesn't think. The brain is just a processing center receiving electrical signals from the mental plane, which is pure consciousness. And the heart, of course, the same thing. We're not talking about the physical organ, the heart. We're actually talking about the astral or the emotional plane. And in reality, you know, we're here to make those work in unison as one, so that it's the perfect, you know, balanced polarity of, you know, mental and emotional. But we now equate thinking with the brain, and where's the thought coming from? And, you know, all our great, you know, doctors out there, you know, doing their experiments. And the same thing with, you know, with the heart, saying, well, why do we feel what we feel here? Well, it's coming from a different place. And when we start thinking as far as where that comes from, and it's not from this, you know, this spacesuit here, but actually from pure consciousness, which is actually what we are, then of course, that's when we realize we have all the power in the world, when we start operating from consciousness rather than thinking that we're doing anything here in the simulation in the first place. So
yeah, absolutely. And when we're in our heart, and we're specifically when we're in our heart and we are in a you know, sort of higher frequency, so we're in a state of like love and gratitude, because this is part of the process. When we're in that state, that the field that we emit, the energy that we emit is different. It affects the people around us. And I actually believe, you know, call me kind of crazy conspiracy theorist, but I believe that that's part of the reason why we're told to distance, and, and people, they don't want to, because hugs and having closeness, especially when you're in that state of love and you're in your heart, is so powerful, and it affects how other people feel, and it affects our body, it affects our physical body and everything. It's just so powerful. And this is why you know, working on ourselves and doing the inner work and trying to keep our vibration high without spiritual bypassing, but, you know, like trying to keep high vibration and in our hearts is actually changing the energy that we're putting out, and the things that we're attracting, you know, into our lives as well.
I would say that's everything right now, that there is and this has been going on since the days of Jesus, or, you know, Yeshua, and before that, there's been this, I think, infinite battle of those who desire to manipulate and control for themselves, and those who live by natural law and understand that we are all part of the same source, we're all the same field, that we generate this together, and that when we come together, we are very powerful. And that the heart stuff is, I love it. I've been going deeper and deeper into the heart math stuff. Haven't touched, I know that documentary too. It's fantastic because the Heart Math Institute actually, it allows those people who are more mind focused, more mental plane, to start to understand these concepts because they approach it in that more empirical way, right? And they show through scientific processes how the heart actually works. It's electrical in nature, how it actually, it has so much more going on, as Bear said, than just this fake idea of a pump, which Tom Cowan's book is great in exploring this and showing how the heart is not a pump and it's much more than that. But interesting that writers like L. Frank Baum knew this and wrote it into children's books with the Tin Man, right, who just wanted a heart. And we look at now with the transhumanistic movement and everyone, and this push towards us merging with robotics, with what's going on with the current jab, messing with our software. And we're literally, it's like he was saying, it's crazy. I know he was deep into esoteric stuff, but like that is what we're up against right now, is like we are essentially trying to stop the Tin Man from becoming a reality. But yeah, the heart stuff is really fascinating. And Laura, you talked about doing the meditation work and stuff like that. And for you personally, what is like one of the top ways for us to, while we get caught up in the modernity of, the modern world of all the chaos, to go back to heart? I know this is something we did a lot in Reunion Summit with meditation, breath work, all these kind of going to stillness. For you, could you give us a little insight? Do you have like a daily routine, or how do you kind of tap into the power of the heart?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, for me, having a daily practice is really imperative, and I recommend it for everybody. So I do certain things as a daily practice, but also I'll do certain things in the moment. So I will do in the morning meditation and breath work. I find that's just such a powerful combination, and I'll do often do. If I want to really, get into my heart, there's a technique called heart focused breathing. And so, and this is part of the meditation, the guided meditation that I've done. But it's really, you get, really comfortable, and you just focus you can put your fingers on your heart, just applying a light pressure, and then you close your eyes and you breathe kind of slowly, generally in for the count of 4 and out for the count of 4 is a nice kind of gentle flow, and breathing in fully but not forcefully, and just focusing with the eyes closed, focusing on as if the air is coming in, like in and out of the heart. So you're really focused on the heart. You're not trying to just get rid of thoughts. You're actually just focusing your attention on the heart. And this is what, when you're doing heart math and you're using the tool, you can actually see on screen your heart brain coherence kind of changing. But that aside, if you're breathing in that way and you're focusing on the heart, your nervous system will immediately calm down, and you'll be in parasympathetic, more parasympathetic dominance. And then the next step is to then create an elevated emotion. So Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I love, he does this a lot. He does this in his meditations. It's kind of the same technique. Is we imagine something that we're really grateful for, or just something that creates a really loving, positive feeling for us, and then that can really again help us to feel really good and be in our hearts, and it changes the energy that we're putting out. And so I'll do like that in the morning. I sometimes do other types of breath work as well. So I quite like the Wim Hof method.
We're big fans. Yes.
Yeah. So that's great. And I've done the kind of whole ice thing as well. But I find that a bit more challenging. the cold, because I love being warm. But certainly, the the breath work, and they're really important for me. But also, as I go through, I think as you do more of those daily practices, it becomes more natural to drop into that state, and that's why I think it's very important to do those things regularly. But I often have times where I feel like I'm out of my heart, and I notice it, and I think this is one of the key things. It's as you develop in your kind of spiritual journey, you really start to become very aware, and it's important to be aware of your body and how you feel, and not kind of push those feelings aside and distract yourself or numb yourself. And so I regularly have, despite all the work I do and all the things I've done, I regularly have times where I feel some anxiety rising, or I start to panic and I get in my head, especially when I see what's happening in the world. I only have to go on Telegram for 5 minutes and I see something that's happening and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's a nightmare. But I notice that I'm doing it, and then I will just sit for a moment and just breathe and center or meditate and just go into my heart, and go into that state of presence. Because when we're just constantly thinking and we're creating this imagery and these stories, and then this worry about what may or may not happen, we're just creating all of that in our mind. And so if we come back to the heart and to presence, for me personally, there's a peace and a stillness in that. Mm-hmm. And I feel better. I will say for some people who aren't used to doing meditations and sitting in that way and feeling and all of those things, it can be really tough at first. And so I always recommend people kind of just go slow, and particularly they start with like guided meditations, because if we aren't used to connecting and to really sitting with our feelings, then it can be really overwhelming, especially if we've got a lot of stress and we've had a lot of trauma in the past that we've not been dealing with. Many people just will distract themselves, will numb themselves from experiencing the feelings. And so for many people, when they first start to meditate or do any of these meditative type practices, they find it really emotionally, they find it really unpleasant and quite distressing, and they don't want to feel the feelings. And so I think it's just important to recognize that for people that aren't used to doing it. I've found with clients in the past, I've asked them, there's been clients I've said, how often do you spend just being? And they've said, what do you mean? And it's just this alien concept of just sitting and being and kind of feeling and going into the heart and not do it, because we're just doing, thinking and doing all the time. So yeah, I think for everybody that's beneficial.
I mean, they've got us from the very beginning now. I see it with my kids, and it's a constant battle. It's like even when as a kid in the 80s, like I spent a lot of time by myself, just out in the backyard playing.
Yeah,
there weren't devices. There wasn't. I mean, sure, we had a Nintendo Entertainment System. That was like a huge thing for me to get, but that required you to go inside on your TV. And my mom was like, "Get outside," And I know, Bear, you were fortunate enough to like really be in that realm where you were with your thoughts a lot, and it was something now that kids go, that's boring. Like, what they need stimulus, they need stimulation, and it's addicting, right? It's like this weird thing that they put. It's almost like you're entrapping yourself. And so now in modern times, we have to make the intention to go into those situations. That's why I love gardening, and I'm trying to garden without a podcast on right now and stuff, because I do that a lot, but I'm trying to just garden with nothing and just be with my thoughts, because that's where the magic happens. That's where the gnosis is, right? That's where the wisdom is. That's
Absolutely.
Where the true knowledge is. And I'd love for Bear, you speak a little bit from your experience there growing up. I won't say what decade, but I mean, you must see the massive difference now between kids nowadays that are big. I mean, essentially most adults in their 20s, 30s are kids still, from what I see. That we don't have grown-ups anymore. We have children acting as grown-ups because they have been distracted their entire life. And Laura, that's why I love the work you do, because you are able to reach these people through a platform like Instagram, where people are just, swiping through, looking at memes and whatever they're into. And then you have this like grounding force with the presence you have and the way you speak. And, I just feel at calm by just listening to you. And I think you're really helping a lot of people realize, whoa, put the device away, slow it down, learn how to breathe. Most people don't know how to breathe. Most people are shallow breathers, and they're not in touch at all. And just something as simple as breathing correctly can open up the world. But yeah, Bear, I mean, you must just be like, what is going on nowadays? Because kids it really like crushes my soul to see right now, like kids running around in masks on, of course, at school, outside, or playing soccer with masks on, like I just saw on our vacation. But then with the constant just bombardment of distraction, and those are going to become adults that are distracted and have no idea who they are.
Yeah, I do think that those of us that grew up in the Paleolithic age have an advantage because we were very free range, and I grew up very rural as well. So, we didn't have the same kinds of thoughts going through our head. We didn't even have a television. And so, your thoughts were more about your imagination, and you're constantly communing with nature and just figuring out the next thing you want to do. And it was always tuning into a tree you were going to build a fort in, or building a grass sled, or it was just a totally different state of being. And, like a lot of people, I got into meditation a long time ago and had the same struggles. And then, I think what turned my whole thing around was martial arts. I jumped in with both feet, and, it was old school, more internal based. And, we learned how to use our mind properly. So rather than sitting there like I used to do with beginning meditation, like back in the 60s, where you're struggling, trying not to think, no, you just give your mind something to do. So in martial arts, we learn how to just, focus on this point, that point, and it all had a practical application. And so with the heart, the wonderful thing about it, it's an octave. And when you focus with the mental plane and bring your attention there, then it literally transmutes all the other things below it. And so you don't even have to, struggle with anything. You just give your mind something to do. You say, think here. And, with practice, I can be at the grocery store or whatever and have an encounter of any type, and just automatically my attention goes there because I've done it enough years. And then, the thing that, was just aggro about 2 seconds ago, it's just gone, and I didn't even have to try to do anything. So it's really a visceral thing. It's not mystical at all. And, we are entering into the age of transmutation, and the heart is the organ that transmutes energy in our physical being. So I think we just have to get to know how to use our own equipment. And it's not that big of a thing. If you tell somebody, okay, just focus your energy on your hand, and, they sit there and they stare at, what happens pretty soon, it starts feeling kind of more full, and you start having different sensations in your hand. Well, it's the same thing, to do the same thing with the heart. But the thing is you bring the energy here, and just amazing things happen, and you don't have to, go into mental gymnastics about what you're going to say to so-and-so, or solve any problem you had. So it's pretty easy stuff. And it's things that we should be learning from day one. Pretty tough these days with kids that are watching God knows what on the internet.
Yeah, that's why that's why I moved to where we moved, and my kids are outside right now. They're digging a well. They came up with these ideas themselves. We're going to dig a well, Dad. I'm like, well, don't fall in and die, but okay, dig a hole. And then they're building forts, and they're working outside. And my kid, who's 7, he's still deep in the theta imagination zone, like the way his mind's working and everything. So I just will watch him outside from my office sometimes, and he's just like in a whole other world in the front yard. And it's so magical, right? And to strip that from kids by putting a mask on them and enforcing them into the herd mentality so young now. And things like TikTok and stuff where they're just wrapped up in these like swiping, looking at content, 15 seconds of content. To me, it's you can see what the agenda is, right? And how frightening that world could be, where we have, I mean, we've already seen it. We've seen it in this generation right now in their 20s and 30s, how lost many of them are. Many of them are awake too. But many of them are very lost and confused and scared. And Laura, you are doing great work by reaching these people on a platform like Instagram where they're on, and getting them to understand that they are truly powerful. Because I think in the end, that's where a lot of humanity is missing the point, is that this materialism that Bear mentioned earlier, and this like very mechanistic notion of reality, and the way that this sort of modern framework of scientism and this neoliberal concepts, and this relates into the economy and everything, that we're all inherently selfish. We're inherently apes that have, through the miracle of just randomness and cause and effect, have become accidental consciousness, right? That's pretty depressing. And like a great majority of those in the West especially believe that and understand that to be the reality. And immediately that spell gets broken when you have a transcendental experience doing meditation. When things start to happen that you, as Bear is saying, going into this age of transmutation, that's great. But even like simpler than that, you'll start to realize as you're more tapped into the field, like your life, just magic starts happening. Things just start happening where life gets cool. And like you would think, wow, what a coincidence. Well, there are no coincidences, right? Like, wow, I can't believe I just bumped into that old friend. Like we were just in Bend snowboarding, and I bumped into like 2 or 3 old friends, like randomly from all different places. And it happened to be, one was a DJ friend who now wants to come out and play at Music and Sky. And who was like, oh, we're ready. God, thank God you're doing an event. Like, is that random? Like, yes, that's what most people would say. That was just random, but maybe that was meant to happen for a reason. And that's the magic of this realm. And the more tapped in you are, the more that happens to you. And the cooler the experience is. And that is what I try to instill in my kids every day. And you get that by going outside and living in your imagination, not by, playing video games and stuff's cool. Like I enjoy it, but everything in spades. And obviously that's the realm that they're forcing people into, is this digital simulacrum where we are living in literally a digital environment. So, Laura, what's your journey looking like now? I know you've moved a bit, right? You're obviously originally from London, correct? And
originally from London, yes. And I just want to say, like, listening to you guys sharing about your childhoods just reminds me of mine, and it just really brings it home to me how different life is now. I cannot imagine being a child in this, or a teenager in this current time. It's just so different. And when I was a child, I was the same. I had such an imagination, and I'm an earth child, so I used to love just being on the grass in the garden, climbing a tree, making things with my hands, gardening. It didn't matter what it was. I was always doing like something that just felt good to me. And it was very, very rare that I was on a screen. This only screen we had was a TV, right? So there's not even any, as a teenager, I didn't even have a mobile phone. Like, imagine. Right. And so it just kind of reminds me, and it's so important, as you were saying, Mike, to be able to be in the imagination, and to just discover and to spend time with yourself. I used to spend a lot of time with myself very happily, and doing things that we enjoy. And on that point, actually, you mentioned about doing gardening and other activities. This is another way that people can kind of access presence and come more into their heart, is by doing something. They don't have to just be doing meditation. I mean, I really advise meditation and breath work. I think it's amazing for everybody. But just doing things that, for me, I love painting, and drawing, and just making things. I love cooking, and just doing creative things. And when I'm doing those things, I'm in a flow state. I'm not thinking about what happened yesterday and what might happen and the dreadful state of the world. I'm just really in flow, and I'm present, and I'm just enjoying myself. And I think that, you know, particularly with the way things are, as you said, everything about society, everything is designed to disconnect us. I mean, where there's no attention span anymore, people don't want to sit in silence, like they find it painful. They're always looking for a distraction. You know, the attention span of people is like nothing, and so, you know, we're having to, as you said, we're kind of having to fight against that almost, or I don't like the term actually fighting against something, kind of like fighting for, you know, getting back to our natural way of being and avoiding these distractions. But it's really hard. I mean, it's a constant challenge to do it. You know, I know, like I'm online, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Telegram, where I obviously don't get censored a bit more on Instagram, but yeah, it's really difficult to, and this is a challenge for many people when there's so many distractions and so much drama as well happening in the world. I think, you know, that's really difficult for us. But sorry, going back to your question about where I grew up. Yeah, I grew up in London, as you might be everyone might be able to tell from my accent. But for the last few years, I've lived abroad mostly. So I lived in Cape Town, South Africa.
Oh, wow.
I lived in southern Spain, and in Bali, Indonesia, the US for a little bit, in LA, and then Mexico. So, and now the US again. So yeah, I've moved around quite a lot, but I'm definitely a London girl through and through, really.
I mean, do you see yourself ever going back there with the condition of this? I mean, cities in general, but London is pretty crazy these days.
Yeah, London's wild. I mean, I know people in London. I have friends there, and I have people who reach out to me on social media as well who are there. And London seems to be pretty bad, as you know, in terms of, because there's lots of different. I mean, there's places in the world that I have to say, Tulum, Mexico. Apart from a little bit of mask wearing, you wouldn't even know anything was happening. Everyone's having full moon parties on the beach and doing yoga, and just it's just normal. There's not really much that's different. And then you have other places where it's, you know, pretty extreme. And I think London is pretty extreme. And it really saddens me to see what's happened to the UK and what's happened to London. And I think, you know, there's, you know, obviously many people are feeling that. They're going through a grieving process, really, because London particularly, you know, is, I mean, it's crazy, you know, it's a busy place, and there's a lot of intense energy there, but it's such an amazing place for museums and galleries and restaurants and the theatre. I used to love going to the theatre, concerts, music concerts. It's so rich, and that so much of that has just been destroyed. And there's there's the strict rules, and you know there's a lot of, you know, really kind of crappy stuff happening. And so that for me is really sad. And also, you know, my family are still in London, but with the way things are, I don't currently want to be there. And so actually that's something for me personally that I'm kind of grappling with a little bit, is wow, I might actually, depending on what happens, especially with like vax passports and things like that, I'm having to come to terms at the moment with the fact that I might never see my family again. Like, my parents are pretty like elderly, and I may never see them again. It's just insane to think that could be the case. But that is a possibility, because there's no way I'm getting a vax to travel. So yeah, and I think many people are having to deal with this, you know, these kinds of challenges. And navigate those challenges. But yeah, I don't see me, unless, you know, there's huge change and we're allowed to, you know, travel freely without all these restrictions and possibilities of being stuck, you know, in a place. I don't really see myself going back there, which is kind of, that kind of weighs heavy on me a little bit. But at the same time, I do believe that everything is kind of happening for a reason, and I have to I allow myself to feel the feelings, but I accept and surrender to what will be. And that's a balance that, you know, a kind of combination of things that it's taken me a while to get to that point where I can do that. And I've had to do that a lot over the last year, is kind of have, you know, allow myself to feel what I feel, but not dwell on it, and not try to not attach my happiness to what I want to happen, you know, because then we're endlessly disappointed and stressed because we want to control the outcome and control what happens, and we can't have what we want. And then the ego, you know, gets really upset. And I've done a lot of work around that and continue to do that. And I think that's actually one of the things that is going to be helpful for people, is to really learn how to do that, and just accept the things that we can't change, or accept that things may not work out as we want them to, and to know that we can be okay. We don't have to attach our okayness to things being a certain way, because I think that's where a lot of the distress and stress comes from.
Yeah.
It's so
I was just going to say real quick, Barrett, do you think Brian Rose, I don't know if you follow politics at all, but he's like, I don't know what's going on with the mayoral race for London. Isn't that like coming to a head right now? Or, but he's like, you know, the London real dude, he's like going for it. And it seems like the political, and Bear and I are so anti-political. We see it as all part of the game. It's all part of the show. Right. But it is interesting how like someone like him is kind of become like in the front runner for potentially being a mayor of London.
Yeah. I think the fact that he, you know, the fact that he is so popular and that he is the front runner, that's showing us something. That's showing us that people are fed up, and people want someone who's not a politician and not part of that system. And yeah, it kind of speaks for itself, really. So yeah, things like that, you know, I find really interesting, and it's kind of like, oh, this could be interesting, and how might things turn out? But I also think, gosh, anything could happen. Literally nothing surprises me now. Nothing. Yeah. Like every time I hear, oh, this has happened, I'm like, yeah. I'm kind of not surprised by anything. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, enjoy the show, right? Go ahead, Vera.
I like to sit back and just watch more the macro cycles. And you know, when I grew up, you know, I grew up in a different culture and grew up with broken English in the house, and you know, it was totally different. And my ancestors came here, my grandparents, from countries to escape fascism, and so I heard a lot of firsthand stories of what that was like. And, you know, just Mike and I both are students of history. And when and we try to get real history, not this garbage we got in schools. But, you know, the cycles used to take a little bit longer to come around. And now I look just in my lifetime, where I grew up with concepts of communism and fascism, and we were taught how evil it was and that sort of thing. And now it's just within my lifetime, I see that cycle coming back where people are actually embracing it. But the previous cycles, it took longer, you know, periods for people to kind of go in and out of these phases. And now you see everything just really kind of intensifying and the cycle speeding up. So what encourages me is that, you know, you guys are talking about Brian Rose. Well, just, you know, we're not going to overstay our welcome for years or centuries on, you know, what we're experiencing now. Just, you know, in a matter of maybe even months, we're going to see the whole cycle shift again. You know, we're riding a sine wave, and, you know, right now we're in the trough, and already, you know, I can see just from my vantage point of things kind of reaching a new apex. And then pretty soon that's going to create another whole phenomenon that will become you know, permanent. And that's what we're all here to do, I believe, is make the final decision right now as far as, are we ready to go along for the next phase of consciousness, or are we not ready? And that's okay too, but it's a personal decision. So I think that's also helpful for me when I, you know, encounter the information we're all getting, and it's just like, oh my God, this is so surrealistic. But you realize there's a lot more going on in meets the eye, and every soul is making that important decision right now. So we aren't going to be, I just don't buy it for a second that what's going on is going to take hold even for a short period of time. People are already rising up against it. And, so I remain optimistic. But at the same time, I think people really have to exercise just a bit of discernment so that they don't go down with the ship, because the old ship's going down, no doubt about it. So, yeah, it's just extremely interesting times, and just, with what we were taught as children, and now all of a sudden seeing people just have total amnesia of what was common knowledge just a few years ago. It's incredible.
It really is.
Yeah, it's surreal.
People have been saying this a lot. We're in biblical times, right? It's like we are in times that have been foretold for thousands of years, or if you follow other aspects of what the real history is, maybe 500 years ago Jesus was here, or there's all sorts of interesting stuff with that. But and I know, Laura, you've been watching this show. The Josh Del Sol got me into the show The Chosen. And it's funny because it's a fully independently funded, it's the number one ever crowd-funded TV show in the world. And it's about the story of Yahweh, about Jesus. And it's done in a very HBO high quality manner. I jokingly call it Game of Thrones for Christians, but without all the craziness in it. It's very well done. I watch it with my kids. It's not, it's very tastefully done, and I like it because they don't take it from a very as much of a traditional canonical perspective. They're actually doing it from, I feel like, taking aspects of even the Gospel of Thomas and other elements in a cool way. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. The director might say no, but maybe I'm just reading into that way. But why it's hitting home so hard for me right now is Jesus, or Yahweh, Yeshua, however you call him, what he was talking about in his ministry is like now. It is literally the wretched. It's the same kind of feeling, right? The wretched, the immoral world that we're in has come to a fever pitch, like it was back then. It is time to repent. It is time to figure out spiritually where you stand, and almost like the kingdom of heaven is coming, like Bear was just kind of hinting at. And I think there's a lot of the parables of Jesus, everything he talks about is so powerful right now for where we're at. And when I was in Bend last week on my ski trip in a beautiful town, for those who are familiar with Bend, Oregon, it's like one of the most in the heart of recreation, right? You have biking trails and the Mount Bachelor, and the river, the Chute River goes right through the middle of it. I mean, it is just what really a city should be in the future, built into the wilderness there, where you can do all this stuff. But anyways, everywhere we went were the masked hordes. And it was aggravating to me. We're literally outside at a food market that's, the food truck market, and there's people wearing 2 masks outside. And that's why the title of this, Navigating a Masked World, Wide Awake, why I felt, and this is something we talked about before the show, Laura, for me, it was it's, as you were saying, I was getting the shallow breathing, and I was getting the triggering, right? We're like, these idiots, but because I've been watching this show, and it's been reminding me about the ministry of Yeshua, it's like, what would Jesus do? I keep going to this right now, and I would go to just breathing. Breathe and have compassion and look at these people. They're acting from fear. They're acting from ignorance. And it is so empowering. And it's like, instead of coming at them with anger and that spirit of ego, I just accepted that they were who they are, and I smiled to them without my mask, and I would just smile at them. And I kind of came with this exuberant field of joy and love, and I navigated that week without anyone giving me shit for not wearing a mask. I did have a little neck gaiter because there are some places where you cannot go in this world, and I don't feel like doing the whole common law, natural law battle, everything just to enjoy a vacation with my family. So I had a little breathable gaiter I'd throw in my mouth just to get through little area, like checkpoints, mass checkpoints. But how do we navigate this? And for me, I'm using Yeshua as a spiritual guidance right now. For me, that's working really well. Interested, what are you doing right now to navigate this masked world in dealing with the aggravating reality that we're seeing right now with so many people going along with this agenda?
Yeah, this is a topic that I actually did a video about, a little bit about this on Instagram, which got a lot of response, hundreds of comments and things, and the consistent thing was people who are awake are really feeling it, because they are, they're going out, and depending on where you live, it's obviously going to be worse in some areas than others, but people are experiencing this situation that you kind of just described, Mike, where we want to be free, we see what's going on, we see the agenda, we know our truth, and yet we see all these people complying and wearing masks. And I think one of the reasons it upsets us is that we feel, I mean, I certainly feel when I see people doing this, that they are contributing. It's, for me, it's the compliance, like people will say, oh, it's all the global elite that are making us do this. Well, actually, the reason we're in this situation with all of the rules and everything is because, and the rules worsening, because of course they started off with just a little rule and then another one and another one and another one. And the reason that we're in this situation is because of compliance, because mass compliance. If people just said no, then it wouldn't be happening. And so for me, I particularly, like last year, as this was all new, I was getting a lot of like upset and anger and frustration around it, because I could see that they were supporting an agenda. And actually, I think there's actually two kind of thought processes with people that are wearing masks. There are some people who are genuinely fearful of a virus that's going to attack them and kill them, and they're genuinely afraid. My dad was one of those people, and so they're the one type. And then there's another type, which is the people who aren't scared, but they're just being compliant. And they want to conform, and this is a huge issue that we have. It's the compliance, it's the wanting to please, it's the being scared of breaking the rules and getting in trouble, which all comes from our childhood trauma and our need for belonging and all of this stuff. And so I think, like, for me, when I in my video that I did, I was talking about a recent walk that we did, that was in the forest, and people we're walking in nature, and people are like in masks. I didn't see any double masks that time. I have seen them around, but people were wearing masks and actually stepping away, like trying to distance themselves 6 feet in order to pass us. And my initial reaction is I still get that little feeling, in my kind of like in my solar plexus, like of it's that little like that feeling that we get when we're kind of triggered. And but I don't allow that to translate into my behavior. So what often happens is when we're not aware and we're not used to being able to kind of come back to heart and to love, is we will just react from an emotional place. We're not really thinking it through. It's actually triggering stuff in us, and it can trigger past traumas and things that we maybe haven't healed. It can be different for different people. But we will often just react or just say something without really thinking it through, or not coming from a kind of heart-centered place. It's coming from more of a kind of trauma-based, ego-based place, which is really natural. But for me, it's being aware of it. And so what I do is a couple of things. Like I go into my heart. I'm very aware, and I breathe like you, Mike. Breathing is like the best. Breathing is just the best. Like just doing some, like when I kind of see them approaching, like I will do some like deep breaths, and I give them a really big smile. And depending on what happens, sometimes I might make a little comment, like a little joke. So when we were on the walk, for example, there was one woman, and she was with her, I'm assuming her partner, and as she approached, she pulled her mask up and stepped behind, was hiding behind a tree.
Oh my God.
Like literally. And I walked past and I stopped like maybe 3 feet from her. I turned and looked her straight in the eye and I gave her a big smile. And I said, you know, we don't bite. And I giggled and she kind of went, like, she kind of laughed, but really nervously. And I just think to myself, look, at the end of the day, getting annoyed with people or sending them kind of negative energy, like, or a dirty look or whatever, isn't going to make you feel good. And it isn't going to make them feel good, or it isn't going to make them change. It's just going to make them probably angry and more frustrated and fearful, because especially if they're someone who feels that they're genuinely at danger and that I'm a threat to them, like, and they're in fear. But also I have compassion I genuinely do have compassion for them, whilst I also recognize, yes, they are contributing to the continuation of these rules, and you know, particularly with the children, that really does make my soul hurt. When I see, you know, little children being fearful and masked and crying because they don't want to go near somebody. I mean, that is really, I find that really, really tough. And seeing elderly who are already maybe struggling to breathe, or they're not very well, wearing big masks, like it's that, I do find that really hard, because I see, because they're so vulnerable and innocent. So that's still a thing for me that I have to really, really work hard at. But yeah, having compassion for them, because whether they're genuinely afraid or whether they're just so compliant, that, you know, they even if they know, you know, I don't agree with this, but I'm going to do it anyway, that's you denying your truth. Like, and that's actually really not good for the soul. It's not, you know, it's damaging to us. And so, and, you know, not having the courage to just, you know, walk out in nature, you know, without a mask is sad. It's sad. And I imagine, like, God, imagine being like that. Imagine feeling that way, and recognizing that that's, you know, that's where they're at. I find that really helpful. And also, I think, you know, just understanding that every soul, I believe, this is just my belief, but I believe that every soul is on their own path. And it's not for us to force people to be a certain way. I think we have to live our truth and speak and do what we feel is right from a heart-centered place. And then just trust that that's going to impact whoever it's going to impact in whichever way it will. And what will be, without having this need to, like, make people do something, because that's, you know, again, that's creating stress for us. Is this need to control. No, I want them to stop. Like, even especially with family, I've had a lot of messages about people struggling with their families, and family members who are getting the vax, or family members who can't see what's happening, and it's been a year and they're like, I'm still trying to convince them. I'm so angry that they won't listen. Well, you know, if it's been a year, then, you know, I don't think that anything is going to make a difference. But it's this frustration that comes from, like, wanting it to be different, and it's not, and not being able to change it. But I always ask myself, is this helpful? You know, is it going to be helpful for me to be annoyed with somebody, or for me to get annoyed? Like, they're wearing a mask whether I'm annoyed or not. So I may as well be, you know, kind of in a heart-centered place. And you know, when you smile at someone and just say morning, even if they look at you scared, or they give you an evil look or whatever, it doesn't matter. You feel better for, you know, that you've just put that out, that positive energy, and maybe that has an impact on them. You never quite know, because if everybody who wasn't wearing a mask is smiling and being kind of joyful and friendly, it might make these people think, hang on, I keep seeing all these people without masks, and they're like healthy and happy, and like it kind of in the subconscious, like this stuff might be, I don't know, it might be going in, and you never know, and you just have to kind of accept that it's going to be what it's going to be. All we can change is our inner, you know, how we kind of our inner world, and how we're actually, what we're putting out into the world. We can't force other people to change. I understand this because my family, you know, my mum's kind of awake, my dad's not awake at all, like we're not even speaking, because he thinks what I'm doing is dangerous. And so, you know, it's you just have to accept, okay, I'm gonna be live my truth and say the things I want to say, but then just accept that it's going to be what it's going to be. And I also just want to say that coming from a heart-centered place and being loving isn't about being really passive and just allowing everything to just be as it is without speaking up. So if we feel that something needs to be said, if we see like someone that we know that's that is perhaps masking their children, like I would say something to them, in a respectful, from a loving place. But love isn't about being passive and just accepting what is and seeing all this terrible stuff happening and just saying, well, I'm just not going to say anything because I don't want anyone to be annoyed with me. So that's a bit of a difficult balance sometimes, but I do think it's important that we respectfully and lovingly speak our truth when it feels right for us to do so. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm navigating it. And
there's a skill there. There's a skill involved with doing that, because as someone who has kids and have friends whose parents are true believers in the scamdemic and have their kids masked up that come to our house, as soon as they come around, it's like, oh, take that thing off. Take that dirty that face napkin off. And I do it jokingly, like and we call them face diapers with my kids, and like make kind of just jokes about it,
Yes.
and kids laugh. They get it, and they know I think they like coming over here now. Like kids are starting to flock over here because they know we're like a free space.
Yeah.
So
yeah, humor's a great way to do it. And this is what I mean. It's about being, not just seeing things that we feel are damaging and just allowing them to be, especially when it's, sort of children or someone who's, being abused or whatever it might be. But speaking that truth in a way that's got humor, or is just, like is coming from a loving place, because it's never helpful to be shouting at people or accusing people or untactfully. We have to be it has to come from that loving place. And I think people can feel that rather than it coming from a critical place. I mean, I know there's so many arguments that break out over these things, and it's just there's no point. Like it's just adding to the field of energy, because every single thing we do and even every single thing we think is impacting the energy, is impacting us and the people around us. So yeah, it's a really tricky to navigate.
Yeah,
I think it's helpful to know also that, those of us that are having these kinds of conversations, we're actually here to do a much bigger job than just, struggle with ourselves or our neighbors. And it goes back to that idea of transmutation again. And, after a while, you learn the knack that if somebody annoys you or angers you in some way, well, that couldn't possibly occur unless that was already in me. So if I feel that, it's much easier just to say, oh, thank you, not out loud to a person, but then just go to work within yourself to, take that energy as an opportunity and transmute it within yourself. But what we're really here to do is, again, bigger than ourselves. It's about, we're supposed to be transmuting the energy of the entire planet. That's what we're here for. So if, on the other hand, we're just going in and, getting annoyed with everybody else, then we're just another barnacle on a ship, and we're not doing anybody any good, especially ourselves. And, from just being in the health field for so long, I know every time I get annoyed, no matter how much I want to rationalize my right to be annoyed in the situation, that's reverberating through every cell in my body, and it's aging me. It's making me sick. And it doesn't do anybody any good. Plus, I'm failing with my major mission in life, which is to actually be part of the solution while I'm here, and hopefully leave the place, better off than when I got here. So, like any problem we have, I think the best technique to solving a problem is to think much larger than the problem, And of course, we've all been purposely isolated in thinking that we're these little individual units and that everything centers around us. And, you know, our little world is important. And, you know, we are here on our individual mission as well, but it's much, much bigger than that. So easier to get out of your own way, I think, if you just think larger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why Bear and I, you know, we talk about history a lot. It's so important to see the historical perspective here. And I believe we are in a worldwide spiritual battle right now. But what's so unique about this is it isn't traditionally, it was always more physical in its enslavement, and it's people didn't quite have the role that they have now. We have the opportunity to really play a massive role because of the awareness now. And this goes back to Yeshua and everything he talked about, right? How it's all coming. And now we're here, and this is exciting, you know, and I think we all find that role and live up to it and embrace it and still have a good time with it. And that's something at Alfa Vedic we talk about a lot. I was watching, as kind of an ode to your heritage, I was watching Chariots of Fire last night. Classic movie, 1981. As a film buff myself, I'd never seen it, and it took me a couple days to get through it because I don't even have time to watch a whole movie these days, so busy. But what was, you know, that whole point of that movie was like there was the greater idea beyond the man, right? To break the records so that they could go down in history. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, it takes place in the 1920s after World War I with these a Jewish runner and a Christian, very fundamental Christian runner who are competing from England and Scotland, right, to go to the Olympics. And it's a great movie. And but my point of bringing this, right? True story. They beat the Americans, and who were like coming in all hot as the best runners in the world, and because they had faith. And they just saw that they could do it, and that this was the Jewish guy. I'm blanking on his name. Terrible. I just saw it last night. I'm blanking on their names. But he was in it to make his mark, to show that he could transcend what people thought of him as a Jew. And it's a really noble pursuit, and it's what Yeshua did too, right? He told his followers, "We're going to go to Samaria. What? There are enemies. Why would we go there? Why are you going to go openly heal for the first time our enemies?" And that was his message. It's like, we have a role here to play much bigger and beyond us and beyond you and beyond that. And he was really good at transcending those egotistical kind of impairments that we often run up against. Like, why am I going to help this mass person who just fell down? Ew, they're like, you know, they're helping the problem, you know, they're just causing more problem. No, what would Jesus do, right? He would bend down, he would help that person. He would hug them, hug the lepers, you know? And so let's use those. And there's so many great, obviously, spiritual leaders and masters that had the same message over and over and over again. And so let's use that to our benefit. And I tell you what, since I started really, and thanks to Bear, once I found out we don't get sick from viruses and bacteria and all that, and that the reason why I was getting sick back in the day was because of my own emotional stagnation and my own, you know, I was causing the illness myself. And I don't get sick anymore. I don't get sick. I don't even get the sniffles anymore. I mean, I did quit alcohol, which I think was a major part too. But so when people, I've had a couple maskers tell me like, "Whoa, you're responsible for spreading, you know, this illness." I tell them, I don't get sick. I'm a healthy person. I am never sick. So tell me why. And they don't have an answer. So there is a higher thing why we're here, and let's embrace it and let's have fun with it. That's how I kind of always end these things. Like, let's go out and have fun with it, because while we are in a spiritual world war, this is a very prime opportunity for us to move on to the next level.
Yeah, I totally agree, Mike. I think, you know, your point about, you know, having fun as well. And, you know, we yes, there's lots of terrible things that we can see happening, and we can really get bogged down in that. And I know many people do, but there are also many wonderful things happening. Like, and also I'm actually very grateful for the last year. Which I know like some people find a bit like, oh, really, but that, you know, we are seeing the kind of dismantling of like these old ways that weren't working anyway. You know, was it that great before? No. I mean, now we have the pharma industry exposed. We have many other things and corruptions, and like just people are becoming so aware, and we've had this mass awakening. Like, of course, not everybody's awake, and we're all at different stages. It isn't about we're better than them. I think that's not the way to think about it. You know, we're all at different levels of consciousness, and as you guys have been saying, you know, raising that consciousness and kind of rising above all these other things that are happening is incredibly helpful for us as people, for the people that are around us, but also, you know, for the collective. And I think that, you know, life is still happening, and there are still great things happening, and people are, you know, I personally, you know, I've really stepped into my truth. I've stepped into my power to be like fully authentic. I've met amazing people, you know, mostly online, but you know, there's communities that are forming. You know, we've had Reunion Summit. There's so many things that are happening, and people are are having positive experiences out of this as well. And so, and life is still happening. So let's not spend every day bogged down in the crises and the drama of everything that's happening. Let's also be present and live and do the things that we enjoy doing as much as we can. I think it's super, super important.
I completely agree with that. If it wasn't for the events of the last year or two, you know, you and I wouldn't be talking. We wouldn't all be here together right now. And, you know, what it's really about is kindred spirits finding each other. We're circling the wagons, and we're joining our collective energies to create what we want, you know. And there's a great tendency, I think, in life, the older you get, to sort of romanticize the past. And, you know, like Mike's talking about watching a movie, and over the past few nights, I watched Laurel Canyon on, I think it was on Amazon. And, you know, it's all about the 60s. Now, I thought, oh, this should be fun because, you know, I was in college in the 60s and everything. And, you know, there's a tendency, I look back and I think, oh, that was kind of a really cool time, the music and all this stuff. And meanwhile, now I'm watching this Laurel Canyon, and it's like, wow, people were really messed up. You know, the last thing we want to do is go back to that. You know, everybody's just in their egos and drugged out. And, you know, my conclusion at the end of it was like, oh, well, I'm glad I'm a survivor of that era, because not everybody is a survivor. And no wonder why a lot of us baby boomers are so messed up and out there wearing masks and forgetting about all the ideals that we thought we had back then. So that's okay. You know, that was a stepping stone into new things, but we're definitely traversing into different realities. And it's not, again, about projecting forward or dragging the past. It's about being here present. And I think all the world events that are being thrown at us are nothing more than an opportunity for us to really be on our A game, to stay in that space. So that's what I'm trying to do with it.
Yeah, no doubt. And you know, it's like, I love that idea, Bear, because I think in the truth community, oftentimes we get stuck in glorifying and romanticizing the past, and even people going as far as saying we need communities to go back to the 1800s. And I mean, we did a show on agrarianism, but in that show, we talked about how agrarianism can meet the modern standards of where we're going as evolving consciousness, and how it is an amazing standard for a way to have a community. But also, we're not saying going back to 1820s, you know, especially if you believe in the whole Tartaria thing, because like, who knows what was going on then. But that being said, you know, it's important to be moving forward, right, and sending our consciousness to new ideals and new concepts, and being progressive in that way, not progressive in the way they've inverted it, which is regressive, but in a way that is expansion, right? And that's all about the field. That's all about going to our heart and working together and having these conscious communities come together. That's why we're doing Music in Sky, so we can come together in a physical place and start working on solutions. And we're seeing that a lot. There is a massive hunger for people to come together in community and to witness this change together and experience it and create it. And that's why we're here. We're here to create. And I think that's been one of the most empowering things from 2020 and this year. I mean, I can't believe we're already a third through 2021 almost, right? But is people realizing we are the powerful, we are the ones that are going to do it. And let's use the technology that we have at our fingertips, like the internet, like cryptocurrencies, like ability to communicate quicker so that we can come up with solutions. But then let's ground that in the planet. Let's ground that in our hearts. Let's do it in a way where I foresee those cities. And I talk about this a lot, Laura, because I'm the same with you. Like, I lived in cities my whole life, but now I had to escape because they're fallen, right? The culture has fallen. And so, but I agree, like, I want that culture. I want to go to plays and see shows. And I know Bear's the same way. Bear and Deb, we enjoy that. We enjoy going to an old main street and shopping in people's stores and engaging with them in commerce. And when I watched The Chosen, I was talking this to my parents last night. Life hasn't changed that much. Like, we were talking about the wedding episode, and there was the wedding banquet manager and everything. Culturally, like, there hasn't. The only thing that's changed really is some of the technology. Like, houses are still kind of the same, like, if you buy into that, how history was. So not much has changed in 2,000 years, except for the tyranny that's always here. And that's been constant. So this is exciting. Like, we can change it. We can do it. And so for those that feel empowered by this talk, like, come out to Music and Sky, join us for the next reunion summit, get involved in our Telegram, get involved with Laura's Telegram, and start taking action in your life every day by living in your heart and by embracing love, embracing thankfulness, right? And appreciating. I think that's one thing too that the Christians and the religious folk do really well. And I'm not really religious. I consider myself spiritual, but waking up and doing prayers in the morning is very powerful. And Nick, you were saying, Laura, like doing your meditation. I know Bear and Deb, you guys have your practice that you do that's unique. And I want to start doing that more. I do I kind of do a meditation and do like yoga and do more physical Kundalini stuff. But I think bringing thankfulness to the morning every morning. I try to do that with my kids during breakfast. I ask them one thing they're thankful for the day. And I think that's an amazing practice to do more, to be thankful.
Yeah, I agree. I think gratitude is actually having a gratitude practice and being able to come into a state of gratitude is really, really important. And it does change how you feel. It does change your energy. Gratitude is it's the kind of key state, when we're doing heart math and we're kind of raising, thinking of things that we're really grateful for. It changes how we feel. It changes our energy and changes how we show up in the world. And I think we can often, humans can sometimes just focus on the negative, and the bad things that are happening. And we're kind of wired that way. But I think that, focusing on what are we grateful for, like, even for people that feel in despair, like what could you be grateful for from the last year? Of things that have happened, like just in the wider world and maybe for yourself in your own life. So many people are stepping into their power. They're discovering who they are. Like, even for me, I discovered my voice. Like, I learned to trust source and to kind of let it work through me and to live from my heart. Like, I discovered the Heart Math Institute. So many things that have happened. And I think if we all just thought about what we're grateful for, and even just on a daily basis, just doing that is so powerful, and it's awesome.
Yes. So, Laura, do you work with individuals and groups of people? How do you, and I know you have an internet presence, but do you take on clients or businesses, corporations? How do you work with people, and how can people find you, with your services?
Yeah, well, for the last few years, since I left the corporate world, for the last few years, I've been doing the one-on-one coaching. But more recently, like particularly over the last year, I've really been evolving that. So I'm still, if people want to contact me for, one-to-one work, that's still available. However, I'm also now focusing on building a membership community, which is coming very soon, for really, for content and community. So for me to share regular content to help people navigate through these times, to help them raise their consciousness, to help them get into their hearts, to help them heal, all of those things that we need to do. You know, it's going to be that, and also a community element so that people can actually, you know, share and comment on things and talk to each other. Because I really believe that, you know, those of us who are awake, like we've come here at this time to do this work. This is why we're here, and it is actually quite an exciting time, even though it's super challenging. But in order for us to contribute and to really live our purpose, you know, we have to be feeling good, you know, we have to be, you know, healthy, we have to be working, doing our inner work, we have to be you know, working on how we show up in the world, all these things that we've been talking about today. It's no good lots of people kind of being aware of what's happening and then just, you know, not doing that work. And so that's really what I'm focused on now, because I want to help people, you know, in a bigger way, and to help more people. So that's yeah, that's coming soon. And if you've signed up to my mailing list, you'll receive exclusive content anyway through the mailing list, but also, you know, you'll be notified when the community is up and running and the doors are open. So yeah.
Wonderful. And we'll put all the lists and links down in the description of the podcast and on YouTube and everywhere this goes. And yeah, thanks so much for doing all the work you're doing and putting out this amazing field of love and energy, Laura. Any parting words for our community and for those listening out there?
Well, I really loved having this conversation with you guys. I always feel so like whenever I'm speaking with like kindred spirits and people who are kind of like-hearted, it's just it kind of really gives me life, you know, it feels really good. And to know that we're sharing this with others as well, and hopefully others benefit in some way, or maybe they don't feel so alone, or they feel more hopeful. And so I just love being able to have these conversations and share. And yeah, just sending lots of love to everyone who's watching and listening. And if you want to join my Telegram or mailing list and receive, you know, further support or contact me, then, you know, you can do so.
Yes, lovely. And you know, community is everything. And I think one of the coolest things we've seen in the last couple of years is these like micro communities that are sprouting up through different podcasts, different trainers and coaches and spiritual leaders. And now those communities seem to be kind of like kind of popping in and out. Like we have a lot of people that, I discovered you through Andrew Kaufman, or through Crow 777, or through, you know, Bear is been crushing it late, and he's actually going on a number of big shows. You're going on with the Ikes contact. Well, we've been working with the Ikes, and I think you're going to be doing something with them soon. And then also one of my favorite shows, Bear, with Greg. Why am I blanking? Thank you. The higher side chat.
I'll be on Iconics with the Ikes on Monday morning. And we just had a great conversation, myself and Melissa Sell, who's another part of our tribe. Great, love her to death. And we were on one radio network together. So it's kind of a fun three-way conversation like we're having here. And Laura, I really hope to meet you sometime in person, and I'm trying to make arrangements so I can get down to the next event. You know, I couldn't make it last year, even though I tried, because we're in the middle of a farm and we're kind of short-handed. And you know, if I just leave for a day, things die. So you know, we have to kind of stay on it. So hopefully by July we'll have a little bit of relief, so we can at least get down there for a couple days, see y'all in person, and talk to the folks. And thanks so much for being with us today. It's, you know, these conversations to me are very uplifting. So I feel like I'm ready to go back outside and do it with a happy face on. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and hopefully, Laura, you can come and visit the farm. I know I put that invite out to Josh, and I know you guys. It's no secret, you guys came out in the Reunion Summit. You guys are currently together, and so having I've the warm welcome for you guys to come down this summer, stay in a guest house, hang out. We'll hit the river. and Belle can play with my kids, and we'll have a blast. I'm telling you what, when you come hang out with Bear and I at the farm, time disappears, like in a way that's kind of scary. Like I'll go there and all of a sudden it's like 7 hours have gone by and I'm like, oh, I gotta get
flow
home.
state.
Yeah, I mean, we just have a lot of fun.
So for you guys,
Sounds
you know, when we do have the guest house now here on the farm. You just walk through some trees and you got just a beautiful little house. It's nice, light and bright. You've got a deck where you're looking down on the river, and you just go down our little path. You know, we built a new stairway, you know, down to our private swimming hole. So it's like you have your own little state park all to yourself. So yeah, you're welcome anytime. So look forward to seeing you guys. We may put you to work.
I was just going to say that you may just be advised it may be a work exchange, but no. And also what's great when I go there too, is there's no service or anything. So that is a very refreshing thing. You stop checking your phone, right? It doesn't work unless you tap into the Wi-Fi there on the satellite that Bear's using here. But also at the Music and Sky, that is a no go zone in terms of there's no power and there's no service at all. And we did that on purpose. So for those coming, just be aware, you're not going to be able to Instagram. You're not going to be able to like tap into your Facebook feed. And we're actually we'll have tokens there that you can pre-buy. So we're going old school to use for the vendors and food. So if you wanted to pre-buy on your credit card, we have our own money you'll be using, and cash will be accepted. And on a side note, there are other festivals happening this summer, and we were looking at them, and I was like, oh wow, other festivals are happening, but it's crazy. It's like they're doing everything for you have to wear a mask at an outdoor festival. You have to show proof of vaccine or a PCR test within 72 hours. You have to get your head thermometer checked at different times to check your temperature. And they have contact tracing where they're putting it in. So I'm just like, who would want to go? Like, this is the other thing I wanted to bring up in our talk today. What I saw which was interesting in Bend, is like people want their comfort of the life so badly back the way it was from the debt-based system, which is, what I talk about, why the reason why we've had this comfortable kind of thing is we've been stripping the planet of its resources. We've been stripping the other people's lives, right, in third world countries to experience this. And we've been living off debt forever. And it's all a fake reality to begin with. Going back to normal is not normal to begin with. But we're seeing it, these people in there, and I'm not trying to be judgmental, but when I was in Bend, we were staying in a very like upscale area. And I was like, oh, I'll engage the debt-based system a little longer while it's still around and enjoy, a little luxury. But these people want that life so badly. This is the trap. They want to be in their Mercedes SUVs and go to their Sunday brunches, in their best attire, and be able to Instagram what their meal, their food is, and have that kind of cultural life that we've had for so long, and especially in the West, that they will mask themselves, they will poison themselves, they will degrade themselves to the point where it's like, whoa, what are you doing? Snap out of it. So that being said, that's what like Reunion Summit's all about. That's what we talk about. It's like, let's go for the new. That's why agrarianism and the things we talk about are so important. It's like, no, we can do better. We don't need that anymore. This is all happening for a reason. And it's a good thing because we need to snap out of it as a collective. That what we were doing before was raping the planet, was destroying our consciousness in the way of who we are as divine creators. And there's a reason why this is all happening. So that's my little rant at the end, guys. So thanks, everybody. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up, give it a share, spread the word about AlphaCast. Please go find Laura on her Instagram and join her Telegram. She's actually phenomenal. She's very modest, but she's a phenomenal writer too. She did a lot of the copywriting for the summit. She's a very, very smart person and a treasure on this planet. Thank you for being with us, Laura. And thank you guys for being with us today. Get outside, get your feet in the soil, plant something, go for a walk. Even if you're in the heart of the city, hit the parks, get out in nature. She is our best guide. Appreciate Appreciate you. Love you. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Bye-bye.